Hey, third grade, this is your math video for lesson 6.7. For this one, all you are going to need is your whiteboards and your workbooks. We're going to start on our whiteboards, going over a couple practice problems, and then we are going to do one problem in our workbook on page 203. Okay, page 203. So first, for this lesson, we're just going to be reviewing multiplication strategies, and then we're going to be talking about a game called Top It, which you've probably played before in second grade, but this one is looking at multiplication. So on our whiteboard, what I want you to do is I want you to solve this problem 3 times 8, but I want you to use one of the strategies that we have talked about. So that could be adding a group, subtracting a group, doubling, breaking apart, near squares, any of those strategies. And you might say, well, Miss Kiefer, I know 3 times 8. I have fact power over it, which that's great. But for this lesson, we're going to start looking at larger factors, so numbers that are greater than 10. And that's where using these strategies is going to be very important. So even if you have fact power over this fact, please try and use one of the strategies to solve this problem. So pause this video while you use one of those multiplication strategies. Again, near square, adding a group, subtracting a group, breaking apart, doubling, any of those. Pick one that you are comfortable with and then use it to solve 3 times 8. All right, so I'm going to show you 2 ways that you could use the strategies to solve this problem, and you can check your work with mine. So the first one I'm going to look at is doubling. So remember, with doubling, you have to cut in half the number that is even. That's the only way it can be doubled. So in this case, it would be the 8. So this would make it 3 times 4, and then 3 times 4 because it's doubled. So you have 2 of them. So 3 times 4 equals 12. 3 times 4 equals 12. So then we would need to do 12 plus 12, which would give us our answer of 24. So again, this is an example of doubling. Another way that you could do it would be adding a group. So you might not know 3 times 8, but a close helper fact would be 2 times 8. So 2 times 8 is 16. 16 plus one more group of 8 would equal 24. Okay? So again, these are lower factors, but these strategies will be very useful when we get into those larger factors. So let's look at another one. So go ahead, erase your boards or find a blank piece of paper and try and solve 4 times 8. Okay, 4 times 8. So how would you solve 4 times 8 using one of the strategies that we have talked about? So pause the video while you solve. All right, so the first one we are going to look at is also doubling. So just like with 3 times 8, we are going to cut the 4, so the factor 4. So 2 times 8 and 2 times 8, which equals 16. So then we would do 16 plus 16, which would equal 32. So check to see if you use the doubling strategy. Is that how you solved it? Another way you could do it would be if you cut the 8 in half, you could do 4 times 4 and 4 times 4, and it'd still give you the answer 32. A second way you could solve it would be subtracting a group. So maybe this was a strategy you used. So a close helper fact to 4 times 8 could be 5 times 8, which equals 40. And then we would do 40 minus one group of 8, which would equal 32. Okay. So again, more strategies and just practicing them. All right, go ahead, erase your boards. The next part is we are going to be comparing multiplication facts. So I want you to pick which fact in each pair has a greater product. So there are 6 different ones on here. So I want you to pause the video till you are able to solve and figure out which pair has a greater product. So is 4 times 6 greater than 5 times 8? Is 3 times 7 greater or less than 3 times 4? Is 2 times 8 greater or less than 5 times 5? So pause the video and try and solve this. And please try your best when you are solving for the multiplication problems. All right, so with this, your first strategy would probably be to find the product of all of the answers, right? You solve 4 times 6 for the product and 5 times 8 for the product and see which one is greater. But I want to have you think with a question. So if I asked you the question, can we compare any of these pairs of multiplication facts without solving them? And then how? How would we do that? So what we're going to do is we're going to go through these answers and then we're going to kind of talk about that question. So it'll give you a little bit time to think about it. So 4 times 6 and 5 times 8, which one would be greater? So in this case, 5 times 8 would be greater. We would get a greater product with 5 times 8. What about 3 times 7 and 3 times 4? We would get a greater product with 3 times 7. And our last one is 2 times 8 and 5 times 5. 2 times 8 and 5 times 5. This one would be 5 times 5 would give us the greater product. So if you went through and you solved these, you would know that those were the answers. But I asked you the question of could we solve that? Could we solve these and compare them without actually going through and saying 2 times 8 is 16, 5 times 5 is 25? Like, could we go through and actually solve them or answer this without solving them? And the answer is yes, because we know that greater factors give greater products. So we can just look at which factors are greater. So in the first pair, 4 is less than 5 and 6 is less than 8. So we know that 4 times 6 has to be less than 5 times 8. Okay, so in the second pair, the 3s. So the 3s are the same, but look at 7 and look at 4. 7 is greater than 4. So we know that 3 times 7 would give us a greater product than 3 times 4. And then in the last one, 2 times 8 and 5 times 5. With those, we know that when they balance each other out, yes, 8 is greater than 5, but the 2, only multiplying it by 2 is where it makes it lower. And again, if they're close, like if they're really close and you're still not sure, my advice would be solve the problem, double check your product, and make sure that your answer is correct. Okay? So this will come into play when you're playing the multiplication topic game because you're solving for multiplication problems and then comparing your products. But we'll get into that in just a little. So now what I want you to do is I want you to turn to page 203 in your workbook. Okay, turn to page 203. You can pause the video while you get your work ready. Okay, so on 203, it gives you an example at the top. It says, Sadie uses a multiplication strategy to solve 5 times 12. Here's Sadie's strategy. Remember I said we were going to get into those bigger factors, but this is where it starts. So 5 times 12. So what Sadie did is she drew an area model. That's like where you draw the square to help you. And she labeled the sides 5 and 12. And then it looks like she broke apart and used the doubling strategy. She broke apart the 12 into 6 and 6. So then she did 5 times 6 plus 5 times 6. So 5 times 6 is 30. And then 30 plus 30 is 60. So we could say that 5 times 12 equals 60. So all that work is there for you. What they're asking is explain Sadie's strategy, which is just what I went through with you. So I have over here in text, Sadie used doubling to solve this problem. She used 5 times 6 as a helper fact and doubled 30 to get her answer. So I want you to pause this video and I want you to copy this down so that you have it for future use. The most important part of this is just seeing how they used a strategy that you know, like you know the doubling strategy for a larger factor. Okay, so pause the video and copy that down. So she was able to look at it and break apart the 12 into 6 and 6 and was able to solve it that way. But we know that there's not one strategy to solve multiplication. There's multiple strategies. So part 2 of it says use a different strategy to solve 5 times 12. Okay, so this is where you can pick one of the other strategies that maybe you like better than doubling or just a different one, and you're using it to solve 5 times 12. So once you have part 1 copied down, which is talking about how Sadie used doubling, I want you to try and think about what other strategy you could use. I'm going to give you an example, but I also want you guys to have the chance to try it on your own and try to see, how else you could solve this. And I know sometimes with the videos, you could just keep watching and just hear the answer, but that's not helping you, okay? That's not helping you. That's not the purpose of this. The purpose of this is for you guys to get a chance to hear examples and to try them on your own with the video and then go over them with your teacher later. You're not helping anybody by just listening to the answer, okay? So I want you to make sure you are trying and you are following along in your book. All right, so let's look at problem 2, part 2 of it. So it says, here's another way to solve the problem. So with this one, this is using a helper fact, 10 times 5. So we know that 12 times 5 is close to 10 times 5, right? And if you think about it, it's just 12 groups of 5. So it's like counting by 5s. So if 10 times 5 is 50, we just need to add 2 more groups of 5 to 50. So 50 plus 5 equals 60. So we were just thinking of it in terms of counting by 5s, like skip counting. But this could be, adding a group, which we typically only add 1 group, but in this case, we added 2 groups. Okay, so this could be another strategy. You could do other ones that make sense to you, but this was just the one that I chose to show you. So what you're going to do with your teacher is you are going to do page 204. If you want to peek at it, it has a lot of practice problems on it with larger facts. And what you'll do is you'll go through and you'll try to use your strategies to solve those problems. But one of the things that you will be doing is you will be playing multiplication top it. So on the the EDM website, there is the button, it says top it. When you click on top it, all of these options come up. You want this one here. It says multiplication top it 100. When you click on that, this is the screen that will pop up. It says you're finding and comparing products within 100. So what you do is you multiply numbers 0 to 10 shown on these gems. Those are the things that are colorful. And then you compare the products. The player with the greater product takes all of the gems. Players earn points for correctly multiplying the numbers on their gems, correctly comparing the products, and having the greater product. The player with the most points at the end of the round wins. So here's just kind of the game layout. So you're player 1, they're player 2, and then you multiply your gems. So they did 5 times 4, which equals 20. The guest did 4 times 2, which equals 8. And we said 20 is greater than 8. So player 1 would get the points for this. When you're playing, this is what it looks like. Again, a close-up version. You type in your answer down here, you hit OK, and it checks it. So I was playing it. I was Brooke. I did 1 times 2, which equals 2. The computer was 7 times 1, which would equal 7. And unfortunately, my product would not be greater. So the computer would win on that round. Okay, so you will have a chance to play multiplication top it. Again, your takeaway from this lesson is just making sure you're using those strategies to solve for large multiplication factors. Good job, guys.